Hello, everyone. First of all, thanks very much for the opportunity to present in front of you all. I'd like to give a brief timeline about myself and my involvement with Boomering to start with, just to explain what a 53-year-old man who spent 32 years working at sea is doing here right now, presenting in front of you. So, I was born in the UK, Christmas 1969. And my father and my mother installed at a very early age a fondness for travel and adventure travel. At the age of 21, I went to Egypt on a scuba diving holiday. I fell in love with the scuba diving and thought, I want to do that with my life. So I stayed there for the next 6 years, becoming a scuba diving instructor. In 2003, I saw the writing on the wall, so became a yacht master and moved into yacht chartering over in the Caribbean. All up and down the Caribbean chain, across to Central America and South America, which is actually where I got my name Pedro. Rather being called Pizza, they put on my passport all the time, Pizza, I decided to call myself Pedro. In 2011, I moved away from that side of the aspect, came back to the UK and moved into commercial shipping. Within 2 years, I'd achieved my master 200 gross ton. And within 2 years after that, I'd achieved my master 3,000 gross ton. The beautiful thing about commercial shipping is it's very scheduled. So you work 1 month, you have 1 month off. You work 1 month, you have 1 month off. And I decided very early on, I didn't want to live in the UK. And a friend of mine was from the Philippines. So in 2014, I came here to visit. And now I've been living in the Philippines ever since. So in 2014, all my months off, I was living here in the Philippines. In 2015, I met that gentleman who connected me with the CC, Dean Pascoe. And I'm not afraid to buck the business trend and say we grew very, very close. He's my best friend in the world. There's no one I respect more. And outside of my family, there's no one I love more. In 2017, Dean creates Boomering. Unfortunately, April 2020, COVID hit, and we all suffered with COVID. It wasn't just Boomering. But by the end of 2020, Boomering was half the size it was. We went from about 180 seats down to 80 seats. August 21, though, that's almost a year later, we're coming out the other side of COVID, and things are flourishing for the company. Things are scaling. I was stuck out of the country at this time, working on the ship still. I actually got stuck away for 19 months. And Dean contacted me and said, look, I'm looking for investors. So I said, well, how much do you want? And when do you want it? And the important point here is my investment wasn't in the company. My investment was in Dean. Because as we all know, people buy people. In January 22, I finally got to come back to the Philippines, and that's when my journey with the Boomering began. Dean asked me to come work for the company, and I said, what on earth do you want me to do? What experience do I have? And he said, you're a part owner. When you walk into a room, you have credibility, you're a talkative guy, you network well, and he wants me to take control of the networking, and that's why lots of people in this room see me in lots of networking groups. And I've learned in the last year of my journey, the more I do to help others grow, the more we grow, because karma will look after me. So what's Boomering looking like now? Pretty amazing. 2022, we were voted by Golden Globes as the best BPO in Pampanga in the Philippines. We've just been recognized by Asia Business Outlook as one of the top 10 BPOs to watch in 2023. BPO, what is it? It's a business process outsourcing. It was a generic term coined in the 1990s, actually here in the Philippines. But you hear a lot of the term offshoring. So what is the difference between outsourcing and offshoring? Outsourcing. Outsourcing actually dates back to the very early 1900s, and Coca-Cola is a perfect example of a company outsourcing their manufacturing. Did you know in 1899, Coca-Cola was just a pharmaceutical product sold in USA drugstores? And they decided they want to go global and they were going to bottle their product, and they decided to outsource their bottling. So they outsourced the bottling, but they maintained control. Their head office is in Atlanta, so they still control the recipe and control the brand. Halfway away in the Philippines, which is one of the companies they outsourced to for bottling, they didn't choose the staff. Local Philippine businesses chose the staff. They didn't manage the staff. Local Philippine businesses managed the staff on their behalf. But they were definitely results orientated. Coca-Cola wanted to know how many bottles were being produced, how many were sold, and how many have shipped. So even though they outsourced the manufacturing and moved that away, they still had control of their major product. What is offshoring? The difference here. Offshoring is remote integrated team members. Your shape. And what I mean by your shape is I call it square hole and round peg syndrome. How many times do you go into a mobile phone store and you tell them the the kind of mobile phone you're looking for, and they completely ignore what you just said, take you to the most expensive mobile phone and try and sell you that? They've just spent the last 3 or 4 minutes completely ignoring you and trying to satisfy their own agenda. That's not what offshoring is about. I'm not in the business of telling you how to run your business. I'm in the business of supporting you to scale your business. So we work together on the role you're looking to fulfill in offshoring, and we create a job description. That job description then creates a project outline where I show you exactly what the services are and what the costs are involved. I go out to market with my recruitment team. We source candidates for you. We send you interview notes. We send you videos. We send you personality tests or English language skills tests. The point is here, you select which candidates you want to interview. And when you've found the candidate that you want, you choose them and you manage them. They work on your systems and they work on your platforms. They become a full-time integrated part of your team and part of your company culture. A quick case study here, Corporate Training Solutions in Australia, Mr. James Perkett, a member of CC. So James had never even considered offshoring, even though he knew Dean Pascoe for 4 or 5 years. He's known me for over a year. Offshoring was never on his radar. But he contacted me once and said, I'm looking for trainers. Do you have any expats, Australian expats living in the Philippines who could maybe work with me? So James and I had many conversations regarding this. And I felt comfortable asking him, James, why not consider Filipinos? Education was decimated during COVID. There are a lot of teachers out of work. James's major concern was English language skills. So I sent him some examples. He was very impressed. So he met my business development manager, Gus. When he met Gus, he was super impressed. James had been suffering with his business. He'd been turning down opportunities and missing deadlines. There's only 2 people in his business, himself and his wife. They were both working very long hours and weekends. They were both high-value people within their own company doing low-quality work. They wanted to scale, but they were worried about costs and commitment issues. Those 4 things we could satisfy by offshoring with James, and we suggested it to him. He knew what Gus was like as a business development manager, so we started sourcing candidates as a business development representative to work and install in James's team. James found a guy called Gilbert. Gilbert's now part of James's team. James is doing a lot less of what those 4 things on the screen are. We do a very simple process of finding and onboarding people. It's a 12-step process. We call it a cradle-to-grave philosophy because our business development managers start at step 1, but they don't finish at step 12. Once the employee starts with you, you keep the same business development manager. It keeps them accountable. If they're going to promise you something, they have to deliver on it. And I also want you to notice there, we don't charge a penny until step 10. So when I say it's zero cost and commitment free up until that stage, I actually mean it. Why offshoring? Well, offshoring is accessible to everybody now, not just Wall Street, Main Street. The major hurdle was removing the physical office environment mentality. Well, guess what? Thanks to COVID, remote teams work. And please remember, we're here to support business. We're not here to cost companies jobs. I know for a fact if a company approached us and they wanted to rip their workforce apart and replace it with cheap labor in the Philippines, we would not be interested in working with a company like that. We're here to support people so they can not be buried in their business, they can work on their business. We want you to scale with little commitment and significant savings in costs. You don't have to worry about IT hardware, furniture, office space. Just find someone to work with. We'll take care of the others. While the Philippines, 117 million people in the Philippines, over 80% of them have high English language literacy. 1.7 million people work in the BPO industry, and we're expecting 8% growth year on year. One of the most beautiful things I find about the Filipino people is not just their work ethic, but they don't have an ego when it comes to your business. They're there to support you and your business, not to tell you how to run your business. Lots of different roles can be done offshoring. Okay, there's 4 popular roles at the moment to offshore in the Philippines. The digital marketing specialist. And in Australia, you can pay $75,000. Okay, here in the Philippines, $13,000. You can even think about a social media specialist, a LinkedIn marketing account manager, so someone who could take over yours and everyone else's LinkedIn accounts in your team. Web developers, super hot at the moment. Did you know that by 2025, they reckon there's going to be 2.5 million people shortfall in web developers worldwide? In Australia, over $70,000. In the Philippines, around about 14. Maybe get someone who can do SEO for you as well. Virtual assistants or executive assistants are super hot for entrepreneurs. Get them focused on their business. So that's $55,000 in Australia, about $10,000 if you did one over here in the Philippines. And if you're interested in something like that, I could send you a lovely sheet of paper which explains 28 things an EA can do for you. Our sales department here at Boomering has a team of 6 of them, and I don't know what we'd do without them. Finally, you've got accountancy, very, very hot. That price is actually wrong there. Accountants can demand anywhere from 80 to 90,000 Aussie dollars now. In the Philippines, 10 to 15 Aussie dollars. Okay. Philippines accountants will have US, UK, or Australian dollar tax experience, but why not consider getting yourself a Philippines accountant so the Australian accountant can focus on what they're expert at, which is the tax part, not be bogged down with all the prep work, which any accountant can do. We get more clients that way. Thank you very much. And any questions?
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that. Anybody got any initial thoughts, questions for Peter?
I've got one question, Peter. So one of the reasons why I see often business owners are balking at going offshore is their concerns around cybersecurity, and if they're going to have people who are working remotely, not in a, some office space somewhere. How do you overcome that?
It's a great question. Thank you very much. We actually approach that from lots of different levels. So from an IT hardware side, when we issue them with a laptop, we disconnect all the USB ports. So they can't plug anything in remotely into the side of the laptop. If they're working in our office, we ask them to put their phones inside their locker, and they're not allowed to take their phones to the desk unless it's required in the job. From a software side, we have monitoring software, as well as obviously of antivirus protection. But the monitoring software, there's 3 levels to that. You can be very soft, where it just monitors the apps that are being used during the day, or you can dial it all the way up to the hardcore level, and it can take screenshots every 2 minutes of what they're doing. And finally, we're ISO 27001 certified. Okay, that's probably in the next 2 or 3 years going to be industry standard throughout the world. ISO 27001 is an independent worldwide authority that goes in and audits companies for their security and cyber security and training. So we went ahead and we proactively did something about that before people start clamping down on it. I hope that answers your question. Joanna's in the room, and Joanna also works in the same space as Boomering in outsourcing and offshoring. Okay. Do Joanna and I regularly get in the ring with boxing gloves and punch each other? No, we don't. We have a wonderful relationship because we swim in the same waters, but we operate in different lanes. Joanna's in my Rolodex, and if I've got people who approach me and say, look, I want to offshore and outsource, but there's no way I need a full-time member of staff at the moment. I only need 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, or rather than just one specific person, I need a broad range of services. My response is, well, you need to go and talk to Joanna. Let me do a referral and I'll get you in contact with her. And I know for a fact if someone contacts Joanna or someone's company's really improving and they want a full-time member of staff, Joanna contacts me and says, Pete, you need to talk to this person. They're looking for a full-time team member now. And I think that's wonderful because that's what the collaborative is all about. Collaborating together so we all achieve success.
Exactly, Peter. Well said. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, you are mostly talking to an Australian perspective here. So I wouldn't be worried about the language skills. I've met enough Filipinos by now to not be worried by that. But sitting in Europe, I would be wondering more about the time difference problems.
Thank you very much for that, Philip. So during COVID, when we had to scale down our own business because we lost a lot of clients because everyone was suffering, we did actually close down our 24-hour operation for about a period of 8 months. So our major focus was Australasia. We had to do as much as we could, like everyone else, to tread water and keep ourselves alive during that period. Now we're out of that, especially since August, when I invested in August 21. We've got 1 building. We're back on 24-hour operations. So your team member works in your time zone. So you're in Croatia. If you want them working from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon Croatia time, that's what we organize. If you want them working Philippine holidays and having Croatia holidays off, then we factor that into the equation as well. So thanks very much for the question.
All right, thank you. I mean, that's really flexible. In my case, I have a twofold time, so in the morning and in the evening, which would be more compatible to something like that because I work with Australasia a lot myself. But I'm not just asking for myself here. So thank you.
You're more than welcome. The American market is huge. Are we aggressively attacking the American market? Yes, and I think everyone and everybody should. So when you talk about split shifts, 3 times a week, you can expect to see me in the office from 10 o'clock till 2 a.m.
It's, yeah. Sometimes that's called for. Awesome.
So Peter, you mentioned that the positions that you offshore or people are offshoring full-time. How long is a typical contract that they enter into?
We're looking. We would do contract work, and instead of the maximum, I'd approach it in terms of minimum. We try and keep it to 6 months minimum.
Yeah.
Okay. The major approach we take here is we're trying to find people that will embed in your company and your culture and grow with your company and your culture as a full-time team member. Okay. So as your company takes off and you grow and expand, they move and grow and expand within the organization itself. Do we do part-time? Yep, we're happy to try and do part-time. You have to bear in mind, if we employ someone on a part-time basis for you, they are always going to be looking for a full-time role. And the moment they find themselves a full-time role, they're going to drop you like a hot potato. So what we do is we sometimes set expectation and say, look, do you realistically see yourself moving from part-time to full-time in 3, 4, or possibly 6 months? And if the answer is a genuine yes, then we'll set the expectation with your new team member, and you'll possibly get someone saying, yes, I'm happy to do that, with the expectation of moving to a full-time role as I prove my worth within the company.
Thank you. And is there a variety of organizations that you tend to find want to offshore? Is it just completely diverse, or are there I'm just thinking about positioning when somebody says, oh, do you know somebody who offshores? Is there a particular type of organization that works well for Boomering?
As long this might sound trite, but as long as you're genuine and you're fair and you're equitable, we want to work with you. Okay? Because genuine, fair, and trusting relationships lead to genuine long-term partnerships. And we're very much into longevity here at Boomering. Dean Pascoe, prior to starting Boomering, actually worked for 2 other BPOs that got themselves to 100 members of staff, and then the guy who owned it sold it to make himself a quick buck. The first time they did it, Dean didn't really twig on. The second time they did it, Dean definitely twigged on, and that's why he started Boomering, and we don't do that. We're in it for the long term, the long haul.
Thank you. Okay, our time is running up, so Peter, thanks very much. If you could hit record again. See you soon.